He's not here at the time.
Okay, planning board, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines will remain off. Go for it.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the East Hampton Town Planning Board, our regular and work session for January 14th, the first meeting of 2026. Very glad to be here tonight. A couple things I want to point out before we get started. We may look light up here, but we do have two members who are unable to be here tonight, Ava Warren and Bruce Siska, who are both still members of the board. And Reed Jones has re-upped for another term on the board, which we're happy to announce. And John Thorson, who is zooming in tonight, is joining us as a member recently of the ZBA. He's now, and there he is right now with the crutches in the background, which is why he's not here.
Not a prop, he says.
So he's here participating virtually with us. So that's the board for 2026. One thing that I want to cover again before we get started is that we are not having the public hearing tonight on the Elite Towers at the Springs Fire Department. I don't think there's anyone in this room who's here for that purpose. There were some people here earlier, but if there's anyone who is viewing online or on LTV, we are not conducting that public hearing today at the applicant's request. They have removed it from the public hearing schedule for tonight. They have not withdrawn the application, which someone asked earlier. It'll be set for a public hearing at a future date, but that is not happening tonight. So then jumping into our work session, the first application up is the Landing Artist Studio. Sir, are you here to represent? Okay, all right. Just want to make sure you were here before we start, that there was somebody represent the application. And Eric, you're online with us. You're
Yep.
handling this for the planning board, the planning department. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, and Jen, you're going to be handling it for the board instead of Ava. So Eric, if you'll fill us in, and then we'll invite you to come up and identify yourself and speak.
Sure. An application has been submitted seeking to modify an artist studio on the subject property located on Old House Landing Road in East Hampton. The site is 33,956 square feet, Zone B residence, and within the Harbor Protection Overlay District. Property is currently improved with a single-story, single-family residence with deck, garage, swimming pool, pool fencing, brick patio, deer fence, and the subject artist studio. The artist studio was approved by the planning board in December of 2023 and obtained a building permit in March of 2024. A final inspection request was received from the applicant on September 2nd of 2025, and the following memo from the planning department indicated that the site was not ready for the issuance of a CO. The art studio was constructed largely in accordance with the resolution and plans approved by the board in 2023, but also includes a wood deck, additional doors, windows, and lighting. The application is seeking approval for the existing modifications. In the submitted what I should do is point out that the visual you're looking at is an aerial photograph of the subject property from earlier this year. And then I'll show you the approved survey, which is here. And you'll see the artist studio in the lower corner of the screen with a 15-foot setback. But basically as depicted, and then switching quickly to the existing conditions, you'll see that there was an area of decking put around the studio. The studio is now 14.5 feet from the property line, a gravel area and walkway, some other minor improvements, but I'll get into those. So in the submitted project narrative, the applicant specified the deck was added because of the distance between the entrance of the artist studio and the adjacent finished grade. The original artist studio plans include steps up to the door, and those steps appear to have been expanded to become a deck of approximately 225 square feet in size, which borders two sides of the studio, and you can see that on the survey here, labeled as deck. The Plans approved by the board in 2023 included sliding doors on the southern facade of the studio, no windows or doors on the eastern facade, 3 small windows on the western facade, and 1 large window on the northern facade. As presently built, only the southern and eastern faces comply with the approved plans, while the western and eastern sides do not comply. The western facade includes 3 small windows similar to what was approved, but also has glass sliding doors and decorative wooded sliding barn doors. Wooden, excuse me. And then in the memorandum prepared by the planning department, there are photos that compare those 2 facades from what was approved and what's existing. The applicant should explain the reason for these changes from the approved plans, and the board should discuss whether they are appropriate. Just for the record, the planning department has no objection to those changes. In the original application, no lighting was shown, proposed or approved. Currently, 4 lighting fixtures are on the studio, 1 on either side of both doors. This lighting appears to be dark sky and town code compliant, but the applicant should confirm this and specify the lumen levels and color temperature of the fixtures. This could easily be accomplished by providing manufacturer specification sheets for the fixtures chosen or identifying the type of bulbs used. The submitted survey prepared by George Wellbridge Surveyors bears the name Map of Property, which you can see in the top right-hand corner. The planning department recommends this survey be revised to have a name such as Map of Landings Artist Studio and Residence. The board should discuss whether it agrees. Additionally, the distance between the artist studio and the rear property line is slightly decreased from what was approved. The planning board approved a 15-foot setback between the rear property line and the studio has been built at 14.5 feet from the rear property line, as you can see on this survey. Although this is slightly closer to the property line, it is noted the minimum setback requirement for a lot of this size is 10 feet, therefore making it still compliant. The board should discuss whether this decreased setback is acceptable. In conclusion, the applicant should explain the need for the modification after the previous site plan approval, revise the title of the survey, and manufacturer's specification sheets which provide the color temperature and lumen level for the existing light fixtures should be provided. The board should discuss whether the addition of the deck is appropriate, if the addition of windows and doors is appropriate, if the applicant should revise the name on the survey and provide additional lighting information, and if the applicant should revise the name on the survey and provide additional lighting information, excuse me. If the board finds these changes to be acceptable, it should discuss whether the modification will be complete and ready for approval, provided the survey title is changed and the information regarding the lighting is submitted.
Okay, thank you very much, Eric. Would you like to speak on behalf of the applicant? If you can identify yourself first, name and address.
My name is Sean Leonard. I'm the architect for the project. 320 Hampton Road, Southampton, New York. All these changes had taken place after I had already prepared all the drawings and were submitted. So to be quite honest, I wasn't privy to any of these changes that took place while it was under construction until unfortunately, the owner wasn't able to be present tonight and has filled me in on the situation that has, come to light. My understanding is that when she was constructing it, she didn't think, at the time that it was that big of a deal for her to have that little deck in the front there, and she thought just for aesthetic purposes, that's the reason for the sliding doors was more of a visual thing from her house, and that was the reason for that change on the front there, and I think she just felt that having that deck kind of coming up, it would made it a little bit easier for her to kind of get in and out of the space.
Okay.
Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I don't think we will, but we might, so stick around. But Jen is going to lead our discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Eric, for the memo. I think that given the applicant just provides us with the updated survey, the lighting plan, and all of the tiny things mentioned in the memo, I think it's fine. I don't think there's any notable change to the plan. It meets all setbacks, it meets clearing restrictions, coverage. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Anyone else have another opinion or want to comment?
No, I was curious about the explanation on why these changes occurred, and I think you provided a reasonable response to that. I don't have any problem with it.
Yeah.
It doesn't meet setbacks, but I'm okay with it, right? 'Cause
It does
It
meet
does meet
setbacks.
setbacks.
isn't it 14 and a half feet now?
It's 10,
It's 10
10
foot.
foot for that size lot.
Oh, 10, right,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so I agree with Jen.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, I think the changes are minor. We have,
We have John first.
oh, I'm
See if
so
John
sorry.
wants to-
John, do you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything I've heard from you all in the planning department. Particularly interested in seeing that the lighting is dark sky code compliant. And I note that, this is an H-pod and some pervious areas were added, but the gravel, or impervious rather, but the gravel is pervious. And the pavers did not appear on the original survey. That just adds, more impervious area to an H-pod, but hasn't been discussed. So that's something I noticed.
Okay, good catch.
Yeah.
Right, he's referring to Harbor Protection Overlay District,
Yes.
by the way. Okay. All right, we have some questions that we are compelled to answer as a board. Does the board find the addition of the deck, fenestration, and lighting appropriate? And I'm also going to add the pavers to that sentence. And the pavers.
Gravel. Impervious, or pervious rather.
Yeah, I think we're fine on the gravel.
Yeah.
Does everyone agree, John, that we are,
Yep.
we find those additions to be appropriate?
Yes.
Everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Does the board wish for the applicant to update the map title on the submitted survey, as Eric pointed out earlier?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. John, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Does the board find the existing 14.5-foot setback between the studio and rear property line acceptable?
Yes.
Yes. It's to code. Should the applicant provide manufacturer specification sheets for the exterior lighting, which provides lumen levels and color temperatures of the light sources to demonstrate compliance with the town code?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, all around, okay. Does the board find this modification will be complete and ready for approval once a survey with a revised title and information demonstrating the lighting is compliant with the town code has been provided?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. All right, sir, I think we are done. So if you can,
I have your notes. I will make sure that all of those things are complied with.
okay.
We'll get those submitted. Do we submit those back to the planning board?
Back
Or to the planning department?
Mhm.
Yeah,
We'll make sure that all that's taken care of.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Appreciate your time.
Sure. All right. Our next work session is Atlantic Headland preliminary subdivision, and I do see that the applicant is present. And Eric is going to once again lead the conversation for the planning department, and Reed is going to lead a conversation for the board.
Sure. So I'll start off by showing a far aerial of the property, which hopefully the board can see now. You'll see that this is in Montauk Point, on the far eastern end of town. I will switch to a closer aerial, showing just the property. And then as I go through the evaluation, I'll switch over to the subdivision map. Application has been made to subdivide a 40-plus acre property in Montauk into 2 residential lots with no reserved area. The application has been submitted as a subwaiver. Since the property is located within the A10 residence zoning district, it must be treated as an open space subdivision per section 193-2-40 of the town code, which requires that at least 70% of the property be preserved as open space. Lot 1 is proposed at roughly 26 acres and Lot 2 is proposed at roughly 13 acres with expansive areas of wetlands throughout each. Access is currently proposed with an access easement of 25 feet in width. The property abuts residential property to the west and east, New York State Parkland to the north, Montauk Point State Park, and the Atlantic Ocean to the south. The subject property is currently vacant with no record of residential or other development in town records. The property is characterized by expansive areas of wetlands, rolling topography, and mixed deciduous woodlands, which are representative of the Montauk moorlands of Montauk Point. So I'm going to switch over to the subdivision map, and it's a little difficult to see just because of the dimensions, but I will zoom in a bit, which should help the board. So with regard to SECRA, the applicants have not submitted an EAF Part 1 for the application and should be required to do so at this time. However, the project has preliminarily been classified as a Type 1 action pursuant to Chapter 128 of the Town Code and SECRA. In the memorandum prepared, we cite the specific areas of SECRA that we believe are applicable. And accordingly, the site's location adjacent, but basically in SECRA, if you're for activities other than residential construction that impact a certain threshold of acreage, that's deemed a Type 1 action. And then if this occurs adjacent to parkland, that reduces the threshold of land disturbance. So accordingly, the site's location adjacent to publicly owned parkland sets the threshold for land disturbance at 2.5 acres. It is reasonably assumed that the creation of access as well as the resultant disturbance from the project will exceed this amount of area. However, an EAF Part 1 and a significantly revised subdivision map, as I'll describe, will be required before a SECRA classification can be made. It's also noted that it's impossible to ascertain potential impacts from a number of aspects of the site and the subdivision at this time, and until an EAF Part 1 is provided, as this document will detail, although not exhaustively, the potential presence of protected or threatened species, archaeological sites, other information. So as previously noted, this property is situated in the A10 residence zoning district and therefore must be reviewed as an open space subdivision unless the board were to approve a deferment of open space, which is a separate process and not really applicable to a 2-lot subdivision. In the memorandum prepared, we cite the exact code section, which is mandatory use procedure that says that any lot within the A10 zoning district can only be subdivided as an open space subdivision. It sets the reserved area requirement at 50%, but that becomes 70% if the property abuts the Atlantic Ocean or technically is within 100 feet of the Atlantic Ocean, which this property is. So as noted, the proposed map does not include the requisite reserved area and will need to be amended. That's a major amendment that needs to occur. Per the town code, reserved area shall be marked reserve area for use of residents of subdivision and possible dedication to the town. This submitted map should be revised to have this notation. The applicant should detail their intention or preference for the future use of the reserved area. There are options in the town code. You can set something up that's an active reserve area, but that doesn't seem appropriate for this subdivision. So it's recommended that the reserved area or areas be dedicated to either the town or a private conservation group for open space preservation, which are 2 of the 3 options other than an active reserved area. The town code requires that a reserved area or scenic easement be provided along public roads for at least 10% of the total depth as a natural buffer from development. As per the town code, the board has the authority to waive this requirement. The planning department recommends that a natural buffer should be required and the board should determine whether it agrees. So basically whether or not you want some component of reserved area or easement to provide a buffer for 10% of the depth of the lot along the front of the lot along Old Montauk Highway. Generally speaking, the redesign of the subdivision and location of reserved areas should take into account the board's policies as detailed in the town code for open spaces, and the memorandum includes those standards verbatim. With regard to subdivision design, this property has numerous unique conditions that warrant attention when configuring the reserved area and building lots. 2 sections of the town code, subdivision chapter, general policies and requirements, and subdivision requirements, identify the general policies for subdivision review and design, as well as the required information. As a summary, although other issues affecting subdivision design and reserved area location will likely also need to be considered, the following is a list of those issues identified at this time. So basically they fall into a number of categories here, with the first one being existing on-site trails, possible connection to future adjacent trails, and public access. The next being public vistas and scenic resources. The next being freshwater wetlands. also protected plant and animal species, also unique habitat types, also coastal resiliency considerations, as there's a bluff crest in tow, beaches, beach vegetation in the Atlantic Ocean on or abutting the property. Also topography and area of steep slopes, which are present throughout the site, and prehistoric and historic resources, the presence of which is to be determined. So getting into those categories more specifically with regard to trails and public access, the submitted map indicates that a portion of an existing informal trail system that has historically existing on the property will be preserved. Also indicated is a 4-foot wide pedestrian easement. The applicant should clarify if this trail and easement will be for the benefit of the lot owners only, the public only, or both. Historic aerials of the property indicate an intricate system of what appear to be trails. The applicant should clarify the historic usage of the property by the public or private individuals, and a field assessment of areas that have been cleared and or which contain invasive species should be conducted in the area of these trails, as well as the upland portions of the other upland portions of the site. It is assumed that these trails were created around the 1960s and utilized to varying degrees since, but have since mostly grown in. It is the understanding of the planning department that this lot has been used as an informal / unauthorized access to the shoreline for at least half a century, including for surfing and fishing. The owners should be commended for allowing even passively the public to access this portion of the shoreline, which is in and of itself a great scenic and recreational natural resource. The planning department notes that although this property is believed to have historically provided access to the Atlantic Ocean, no such provisions appear to have been formally established. The property extends to the high water mark of the Atlantic Ocean, and similarly, no provision for through access along the beach for the public has been established. The board and the applicant should discuss the feasibility of providing public access either to or along the Atlantic Ocean. And then in the memorandum, we cite the sections of code that relate to trail preservation and the board's responsibility to preserve trail systems. Also cited are the subdivision standards with regard to waterfront areas and protecting those and providing public access. So with regard to public vistas and scenic resources, the property is situated in the Montauk Point subunit of the scenic area of statewide significance. Although a redesign of the subdivision with greater coastal setbacks for the building lots may greatly mitigate potential impacts, the applicant should provide a visual analysis of the potential visibility of residences and other improvements from the Atlantic Ocean and the adjacent public overlook on Montauk Highway to determine visual impacts. Freshwater wetlands. The property contains expansive areas of freshwater wetlands identified and mapped by the town of East Hampton, state of New York, the DEC, and the National Wetlands Inventory. The freshwater wetlands consist of a mosaic of habitats including red maple, black tupelo swamps, shrub swamps, intermittent streams, herbaceous marshes, and freshwater ponds. These wetlands, ranked as Class 1 wetlands by the DEC, are extremely significant habitat for wetland-dependent species of flora and fauna, in addition to flood control. Either a permit from the DEC or a letter of non-jurisdiction from this involved agency should be submitted. The submitted map indicates that the wetland boundaries were last verified by the town in 2019, whereas they were last verified in 2025. The notation on the map should be corrected. As drawn, both lots would contain building envelopes within natural resources special permit jurisdiction of nearby freshwater wetlands. The planning board may permit lots to be created, which may require an NRSP, but cannot create lots that would require variances. The proposed configuration does appear to be compliant. However, it is likely that there is ample room to create lots and building envelopes which can maintain the 150-foot setback required to keep development out of NRSP jurisdiction. The applicant should take this into consideration when redesigning the subdivision. The reserved area should be situated to cover as much of the area of freshwater wetlands on the site as possible, and additional areas of scenic easements or other protection mechanisms may be required. Priority should be given to the areas of wetlands that are most pristine and unaffected by historic land disturbance after this is determined. With regard to protected plant and animal species, due to the size and diversity of the vegetation within the wetlands, the property has an above average potential to contain protected species of flora and fauna, and the planning department has observed at least one species of special concern, the spotted turtle, on numerous occasions. The blue spotted salamander has not been observed on site, but is known to occur throughout the moorlands area of Montauk. The population of blue spotted salamander is unique in the Northeast because it is the only genetically pure diploid population in the state. Elsewhere, the salamanders hybridize with the closely related Jefferson salamander. Both the spotted turtle and blue spotted salamander are listed as species of special concern, which is defined in the Environmental Conservation Law of New York as, quote, any native species for which a welfare concern or risk of endangerment has been documented in New York State. In addition to the wildlife species of concern, a large number of protected plants can be expected to occur in these wetlands. Most wetland-dependent wildlife species are equally dependent on the adjacent uplands as the wetlands themselves. As noted previously in EAF Part 1, which would identify the potential presence of state or federally protected plant and animal species, has not been provided. Once this information has been provided, and presuming that there is a potential for the presence of such species, the applicant should provide a plan for the protection of these species, including how potential adverse impacts will be mitigated, and should perform a field inspection for their presence. More specifically, the planning department recommends that field surveys to identify the presence of threatened, endangered, or endangered species or species of special concerns must be conducted. Should these species be located within the lot areas, mapping of building envelopes to avoid these areas would be recommended. A conservation easement may be another method for protecting sensitive area, which the board should discuss. Identifying some types of specific species of concern requires field inspections at appropriate times of the year. The applicant should propose a work plan to conduct this work, and the planning department will review to determine adequacy. With regard to unique habitat, the property contains Montauk moorland habitat, which is a unique dwarf forest habitat that generally consists of a dense canopy of short trees and shrubs with an extensive complex, frequently interconnected wetlands, coastal bluffs, and rocky ocean beaches. The state's environmental resources mapper lists the following natural communities on the property: maritime intertidal gravel/sand beach, maritime beach, coastal plain poor fen, maritime bluff, red maple black gum swamp, coastal oak hickory forest, successional maritime forest, maritime shrubland, and marine rocky intertidal habitats. The site also has coastal bluff escarpments and Atlantic Ocean beaches. The moorlands of Montauk Point have been designated as a locally significant fish and wildlife habitat and are a particularly noteworthy example of a habitat type unique to the town of East Hampton. Many areas of the property are pristine, but invasive species such as multiflora rose, shrub honeysuckle, and privets are found near Old Montauk Highway and in areas close to the trail. Additionally, an estimated 3.8 acres in the central portion of the property was cleared sometime between 2013 and 2016. During the planning department's site visit in 2019, some areas of the clearing had been revegetated and fenced, presumably to reduce the impacts of deer browse. When redesigning the subdivision, care should be taken to locate reserved areas, building lots, and building envelopes to avoid fragmenting this habitat. As noted above, a field survey of the property should be conducted, and the subdivision designed not only to avoid areas of wetlands, steep slopes, etc., but also with consideration of the interconnection between these areas and the impact that fragmenting habitat could have on species that may be present. With regard to coastal resiliency, the property abuts the Atlantic Ocean at its southern boundary. It is within Coastal Erosion Zone 1 and is within a Peconic Estuary Program's critical natural resources area. As currently drawn, the building envelope on proposed Lot 1 would be roughly 350 feet from the edge of the bluff crest. As currently drawn, the building envelope for proposed Lot 2 would extend to within 100 feet of the bluff crest in an area that appears to contain a natural swale from the upland portions of the lot that runs down to the beach. Section 255-440, coastal setbacks of the town code, mandates a minimum distance of 150 feet from a bluff crest for construction. As such, portions of the building envelope on proposed lot 2 are not compliant with the town code and will need to be redrawn. Additionally, no sanitary system components may be situated within 200 feet of the boundary of a beach, and the subdivision should be redrawn to be in compliance with this requirement, as it appears that there are portions of proposed Lot 2, as it's currently drawn, that would be within this setback. Sanitary envelopes should be provided for the building lots in a redesigned subdivision. It's also noted that no clearing is permitted within 50 feet of a bluff crest. Proper mechanisms to preserve such areas from potential future clearings, such as putting the reserved area over those areas or scenic easements, should be provided. Additionally, although the portion of the bluff along the southern end of the property appears to be relatively static, the impact of sea level rise and climate change will likely mean that this will not be the case years into the future. The property is situated in Coastal Erosion Overlay Zone 1, which is the most restrictive of the 4 zones, prohibiting any new erosion control structures. It's recommended that a significant setback between the building lots on this property and the bluff be provided, and that this be protected either by reserved areas or other mechanisms to assure an adequate buffer in perpetuity. With regard to topography and steep slopes, the subdivision map does not illustrate any areas of steep slopes, those being greater than 20%, and does not provide information for existing grades throughout the site, although there are topographic lines. The slopes across the property range from nearly level to steeply sloping, with widely varying elevations and apparent natural watercourses throughout, seasonal watercourses, I should say. There appears to be some areas with slopes of 20% or greater. The submitted map should be amended at this time to illustrate all areas of 20% slopes or greater, as the planning board cannot permit this as buildable area under section 220-1.06 H2E of the town code. It's also recommended that the board require that building envelopes which exclude any areas of 20% slopes or greater be added to the preliminary map. With regard to prehistoric and historic resources, no information pertaining to prehistoric or historic resources has been provided. The board should require that the applicants provide at minimum a stage 1A archaeological report, and will likely need to prepare a stage 1B depending upon the findings of a stage 1A. So moving along to the issue of dimensional regulations, both proposed lots have been drawn to meet the minimum lot area requirements, as well as all required yard and natural feature setbacks, with the aforementioned inclusion of areas of the building envelope on proposed lot 2 being within variance jurisdiction of the bluff crest, but otherwise everything else meets the dimensional requirements of the code. The planning board has the authority to reduce the required lot area for the building lots for an open space subdivision per section 193-2-10 of the town code, and routinely does to create clustered subdivision designs. The planning department recommends that approving reduced lot sizes in this location with sensitive natural features surrounding is appropriate. The reduced size helps avoid the proposed lots protruding into the wetlands, areas of steep slopes, and watercourses, topography, unique habitat, and helps maintain rectangular lot shapes. The planning department recommends that the applicant redesign the subdivision, though, before the board determines whether the lot area is below 425,000 square feet, which is the minimum lot area required in the zoning district, and the overall lot configuration are acceptable. With regard to subdivision requirements, the town code lists the following required items, which are missing from the submitted information, which should be added. That includes the notation for easement areas and reserved areas, marked that reserved areas are either for the benefit of the subdivision or to be dedicated to the town. Trails showing the proposed manner in which these features will be preserved or protected. The submitted map does illustrate trails, but not the entirety of the trail system. The map should have the coastal erosion hazard line added to it. The most recent wetland verification date should be provided. The scale should be adjusted. There's some other required items: post office, the address of the subdivision, all utilities, including the names of the utility providers and their location, name and address of the developer or owner of record, test hole data, proposed fire hydrant, well, or cistern locations, or anything required by the fire department, proposed preliminary drainage calculation, stormwater drainage systems, The location of wells, private drinking wells, is proposed. Typical house illustration with sanitary system, and all areas of steep slopes exceeding 20%. Those are the code mandated elements of a subdivision map that are required. Additionally, the following information should be provided apart from the preliminary subdivision map. We recommend that as per section 220-1.08, a site analysis map and written description be provided. That's something that isn't often required in subdivisions, but basically the idea is that you have a separate map and a separate write-up that explains where all of the important resources on the property are situated. So, you know, it would have a mosaic of where there might be archaeological resources that are found, where the trails are, where the wetlands are, where unique habitat types are, maps those out, and then gives a description of where the resultant building lots are proposed to be and why it makes sense in the context of all those site conditions. Also a yield map as required by section 220-1.06 of the town code. Should be submitted. The subwaiver map that you see in front of you does act as a de facto yield map. However, it's appropriate to have that amended slightly and noted to be a yield map and submitted to the record, as that's a subdivision requirement. We don't anticipate that there would be any issue with the applicants having a yield for 2 lots. We just feel that for the record, an appropriate yield map as its own document should be provided. With regard to comments from the Office of Fire Prevention and the Montauk Fire Department, ultimately the Montauk Fire Department will need to approve the proposed map. This includes review of any improvements needed for firefighting capabilities, as well as their locations being depicted on the map. The Planning Department discussed the application with the Fire Marshal, who indicated that the Montauk Fire Department may require that public water be brought to the site. It is noted that public water is located nearly a mile away at Montauk Highway. Although firefighting improvements are often determined in the final subdivision review, the applicant is urged to contact the Montauk Fire Department at this time to ascertain whether significant improvements, such as a long extension of public water service, will be needed. It's alternatively sometimes required that water supply be provided in the form of a well. I don't know what the fire department of jurisdiction is going to require, but we recommend that the applicants reach out sooner rather than later, because I had heard that public water might be required. With regard to drainage and stormwater control, the submission did not include details on proposed drainage or a common driveway plan. This information should be provided in a resubmission and is required by the town code, and the code section is cited in the memorandum. The town consulting engineer will review the proposed project after submission of a revised map, as well as other plans and details, specifically a common driveway plan, if a common driveway is still proposed. With regard to other review required, the Zoning Board of Appeals may be required. Natural resources special permits on some or all of the lots would be required under the way that the lots are currently drawn. And then, as I previously noted, a portion of the building envelope for Lot 2 is within various jurisdiction of the Bluff Crest, and that should be amended slightly. DEC approval will be needed. Freshwater wetland permit, we suspect, is needed. They may issue a letter of non-jurisdiction. And then also a stormwater pollution prevention plan may be required depending upon the extent of improvements and the amount of land that's disturbed. This will ultimately be referred to the Suffolk County Planning Commission. As I mentioned, review by the Office of Fire Prevention or the Fire Marshal will be conducted. Also Montauk Fire Department approval. And then, as with all subdivisions, Suffolk County Department of Health Services approval will be required for the final map. In conclusion, the application is incomplete pending the resolution of the aforementioned issues and the submission of the required items. This property contains an extremely unique and sensitive habitat type, as well as expansive areas of protected natural features and likely various protected plant and animal species. As such, subdivision design must weigh a number of factors and be guided by sufficient information provided to the planning board. The applicants must redesign the subdivision as an open space subdivision with a minimum 70% reserved area, and which places lots in reserved areas in appropriate locations. This includes consideration of existing and potential future trails and public access, protection of public scenic vistas and resources, protection of natural features, including wetlands, bluffs, and beaches, as well as steep slopes and natural topography, a design that does not endanger protected plant and/or animal species or fragment the unique habitat, does not adversely impact coastal resiliency, and which accounts for archaeological resources that may be present. The applicants must also provide an EAF Part 1, a common driveway and drainage plans, a yield map, and all map elements listed above and required by the town code. It is recommended that field surveys be performed and incorporated into a site analysis map, which can be used to guide subdivision design, as well as a stage 1 archaeological study. The planning department gives the standard advisement that applicants should submit the revised plans with a title consistent with the subdivision, and should follow the planning board's consensus on what future items are required subsequent to your conversation on this application.
Thank you very much, Eric, for a very, very thorough analysis of a complicated project. Does the applicant wish to be heard? And for the record, please identify yourselves, name and address, please.
Good evening, Chairman Krug, members of the board. I'm Britton Bistrian. My office is at 9 North Main Street, East Hampton, New York. I'm joined here with Beth Baldwin, who's the land use attorney also working on the project. We are representing Saltzman Business Holdings LP, which is the owner of the parcel at 190 Old Montauk Highway. Eric gave an overview of this, where this is. It's basically the end of Old Montauk Highway just before the state park. The parcel is vacant and undeveloped and bound by the Old Montauk Highway at the north and the Atlantic Ocean at the south. It has a unique presentation. This is one of the largest lots left in the town of East Hampton that has not been developed at 40 acres and has remained that way and virtually undisturbed in the same family's ownership for 64 years. When it was initially purchased by the family in 1962, prior to wetlands and modern subdivision regulations, it could have been developed into 233 house lots, according to the zoning at the time. I think that's just important to sort of note that difference between 233 to 2. The owners, one family all along for more than 60 years, have always viewed the property as an especially rich local Montauk resource. In fact, going back way back, they rejected proposals for development to secure home sites similar to ditch plains. The parcel has long been in the Community Preservation Fund acquisition list, but the town has never made an offer for purchase, and the owners want to move forward with the next phase for the property, resulting the proposal in front of you to subdivide into 2 residential building lots. One thing we want to make sure that we have in the record is that although the owner has permitted access over the ocean and beachfront over the decades, no formal public access or public trails or easements exist on the parcel today. The proposed access easement and pedestrian trail easement shown on the subdivision map are to prevent private vehicular access to Lot 1 and private beach access to Lot 1 over Lot, both of those over Lot 2. The owner has expressed interest in perpetual access via CPF purchase, and hopefully this is still a possibility. This is an initial subdivision view, so there are many layers of data, as Eric, succinctly outlined, to be collected as we get deeper into the planning process. I don't think I want to go through each line item because Eric did it extensively, but just to generally outline that we will pursue all the environmental, archaeological, and subdivision data as requested in the planning board memo. Other than that, we really just wanted to hear some board feedback, and Beth and I are happy to address any questions that the board has.
Okay, thank you, Britton. Appreciate that. So Reed, we'll turn the conversation over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Ed, and thank you, Britton. Eric, just a quick thank you to you as well. That was a very comprehensive memo, like Ed had mentioned, and there's a lot in this memo to go through. I visited the property. It's a stunning 40-acre parcel, a lot of natural beauty. The views are amazing. Just a gem. And in my estimation, this is an example of why the Community Preservation Fund exists. And just to remind everyone, the CPF is there to protect our community by preserving open space and safeguarding environmental sensitive lands for future generations. And as Britton had mentioned, and I've also been told that, and this is good news, that this parcel has been flagged as a potential acquisition target for the CPF. I'm not aware of the CPF's financial capacity currently. My recommendation would be that the town pursue acquisition of the property. It's not very often we have the opportunity to purchase 40 acres of contiguous land. So, and it makes a lot of sense too, as was noted in the memo, the overview, that it's been used for decades by surfers and fishermen, and there are trails there, although I don't know how often the trails are being used currently, but it's a really nice public, there are a lot of public aspects to it that I think are important. Okay, now acquisition, it takes two to tango, and when you have an acquisition, you got to have a willing seller and a willing buyer. And if the CPF purchase is not feasible, which is a distinct possibility, I think that the application must be reviewed strictly in accordance with the applicable guidelines put forward by Eric, and that requires a significant amount of information, additional information from the applicant. First and foremost, it has to be treated as an open space subdivision, which was stated, which would require that 70% of the property be permanently preserved. And there are a lot of things here. I mean, a proposed subdivision map would have to be substantially revised, a visual analysis, a full form EAF. There'd be a lot of things that would have to come forward with it. But that's really my overview, and those are my thoughts.
Good, thank you, Reed.
Yeah.
I think, given the importance of this application, we're going to ask for everyone's thoughts on this. So we'll start with you, Jen.
I think Reed put it all very succinctly, that this property is precisely what the CPF has been designed for. I mean, it's in an area of significance, of scenic significance. It is on the Atlantic Ocean. It's bordered to the north by, current parkland, and it has been used, albeit unofficially, for the past however many years as an access point to the Atlantic for surfers and fishermen. And given the fact that if it were not purchased by the town, 70% of it would have to be given over to open space. It kind of seems to me like a no-brainer for the town. As you mentioned, Reed, I don't know what the financial ability of the town is to purchase this, and what the seller, would potentially, or what the owner would potentially want for it. But it seems to me that this is really an opportunity for the town to expand an already wonderful, park vista. And then, as Reed said, if that does not work, then yes, I think it has to be almost, we'd be starting over from square one, and it would have to be an open space subdivision with all of the requirements that come along with that.
Good, thanks, Jen.
Yeah, I agree with Jen and Reed. My hope is that the town will be able to buy it. However, right now we have the task of doing a preliminary subdivision review, and I have several items that I wanted to go over. That some of them reemphasize what Eric has said, and some of the other members of the board, and a few other items that I think are important, or to really put my spin on it. First of all, I think given the scale and the ecological diversity and adjacency to state parkland and the Atlantic Ocean, we need a full EAF Part 1, including identification of protected species, unique habitats, wetlands, steep slopes, and archaeological sensitivity. By the way, Eric, I think there's a typo on the memo. in the application information list, the secret type of action is listed as unlisted. And in the memo, you mentioned that it's classified as type 1.
Preliminarily.
Probably.
Yeah, no, that is a typo. There wasn't supposed to be a conflict there. We technically can't determine the secret class until the EAF Part 1 is submitted. But yeah, in the background information, that should have mirrored what was in the body of the content in the memo, which is preliminarily we are thinking that it's a type 1 action.
Okay. And I want to reemphasize that, you know, an A10 zoning with a proximity to Atlantic Ocean absolutely triggered the 70% open space requirement as required by Chapter 193, and that's non-negotiable. The reserved area should cover the bulk of wetlands, steep slopes, and the most intact moorlands habitat, and that coastal bluff and beach margins be placed in reserved areas of conservation easement. This is sound and consistent with the town's general policies on natural features, drainage, and coastal hazards. The requirement to bring building envelopes outside NRSP jurisdiction, whether feasible, and to comply fully with bluff and beach setbacks is also very appropriate. We should identify all trails, clarify the pedestrian easement, consider trail relocation with reserved areas, and encourage public access rights consistent with code policy. A visual analysis from the Atlantic and the Montauk Highway overlook is appropriate given the property is in a scenic area of statewide significance. We should also require a standard subdivision yield plan that excludes wetlands, steep slopes, beaches, and reserved areas from buildable acreage. The laundry list of missing technical items like sea line, steep slope mapping, utilities, drainage, fire protection, test holes, etc., is legitimate and should be adopted as a planning board requirement for completeness. A 40-acre scenic area of statewide significance, oceanfront, wetland-dominated parcel cannot be a minor sub-waiver. The property is heavily constrained by wetlands, slopes, and coastal setbacks. It seems to me that creating envelopes that maintain 150 feet from wetlands is going to be very difficult. The applicant must demonstrate if such envelopes are physically feasible. If not, the board may need to consider whether subdivision at the requested density is appropriate at all. I don't think we should signal that 2 lots is a given. The ultimate yield may be fewer than 2 lots if environmental and design constraints preclude 2 fully compliant building envelopes, and that the yield map is not a guarantee but an analytical ceiling. I'd also like to know how will construction occur on a steep wetland-rich bluff-adjacent site, and how temporary impact, cut, fill, construction access routes, staging areas, etc., would be managed. We should require as a condition of subdivision approval, at least conceptually, a construction access and erosion control plan consistent with steep slope and wetland constraints. Given the sensitivity of coastal and wetland resources, we should also require a conceptual wastewater analysis with advanced treatment and siting justified in relation to wetlands and the ocean. The Planning Department memo appropriately notes sea level rise and coastal erosion overlay zone 1. We should condition subdivision approval with a prohibition on future shoreline hardening and general inland placement of building envelopes. Lastly, we should require the restoration of the 3 acres of unpermitted clearing that was done between 2013 and 2016. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Lou. Member Thorson, would you like to comment?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Krug. I'm not sure I have much to add beyond Eric's very thorough analysis, and I'm in complete agreement with all of the recommendations that were made by the planning department. And I was very impressed by what Member Cortese, the points that he made as well. And the applicant noted what a pristine and rare piece of property this is, 40 acres on the ocean, never developed, containing wetlands, and native species that are endangered. I hope that there are a willing buyer and purchaser here for consideration for the Community Preservation Fund. That would be the ideal outcome. Otherwise, I agree with the sentiments that have been expressed that because this is such an important environmentally and scenic area that all steps available be taken to preserve it scenically and environmentally. So that's all I have to add.
Good. Thank you very much, John. Yeah, so just to wrap it up, I think that we're all of a mind on the board here that the ideal outcome here would be purchased by the CPF, whether or not, as Reed first asked the question, if there's enough funds in the CPF at the moment to get into a venture of the scale is something we don't know. So therefore, we will, of course, need to proceed and make sure that we understand that there is a way to develop this as sensitively as possible, using an open space subdivision methodology, reserving 70% of this, and all the many things that have been talked about, Member Cortese, Eric, all the other safeguards that need to be put into place to make sure that this has minimal impact needs to happen, and we need your cooperation in getting going on that particular process. So with that, we'll focus on the questions that we have in front of us, which really outline some of those points and issues. Does the planning board agree that the full form EAF Part 1 must be provided?
Yes.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. Does the planning board agree that the subdivision should be redesigned and submitted as an open space subdivision, providing a minimum 70% reserved area?
Yes.
Yes.
Providing, CPF doesn't want it or can't.
Well, we're going to get to that
Okay.
question. Yes, thank you, though. Should the applicants identify all trails on site, clarify the purpose of the illustrated 4-foot wide pedestrian easement, and address any proposed mechanisms for public beach access or through access?
Yes.
Yeah.
All on board with a yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Does the planning board agree that a visual analysis which details the potential impacts of residential development on the property on recreation on the Atlantic Ocean and/or the scenic overlook at Montauk Point State Park should be submitted? Yes. Definitely.
Yes.
Elizabeth Baldwin, Essex Hefner and Angel on behalf of the applicant. Some of the questions I think might be a little premature. We know we have to make some serious changes to our map and including the 70%. So I think certain aspects of the asks here might be a little premature until the board actually sees the open space map in front of them. And then maybe at that point we can discuss what additional, I think the last two questions and this question is specifically with regard to the visual, it might be helpful to really determine what the board wants to see on the map once you have the framework in front of you.
Right. I think these things are things that we think should be incorporated into the first plan.
Into the first plan?
Do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. We just feel like it might be a little premature
Okay.
before the board.
Well, we can, as things progress, we can talk
Right.
about that.
Okay.
But we want to make it clear what we're thinking now that we should be seeing.
Right. Okay.
Thanks for bringing that up, though. Should a field survey be performed and a site analysis map prepared based on these findings? Does the board agree that the following should be identified? Protected plant and animal species, either as present or ideal habitat type for such species, protected natural features, areas of unique habitat, all existing trails, areas of clearing and land disturbance, areas of greater than 20% slopes, prehistoric or historic structures, resources rather.
Yes.
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 Should a yield map in accordance with the requirements of the town code be provided?
Yes.
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 Yes. Does the planning board agree that the applicant should provide the submission items required by section 220-2.08 of the town code as detailed above?
Yes.
Does the planning board wish to send comments to the town board and or director of land acquisition recommending the property for public acquisition for open space preservation purposes?
Yes.
Yes.
A letter to
Yes.
both.
Yeah, letter to both.
Yeah.
Exactly. Should a stage 1A archaeology report be submitted?
Yes.
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 Does the planning board agree that building envelopes which exclude any areas of 20% slopes or greater and any areas within variances jurisdiction of protected natural features be added to the preliminary map, and that these may be potentially required to be further restrictive based on field surveys?
Yes.
Does the planning board agree that the redesigned subdivision should include a buffer along Old Montauk Highway of at least 10% of the depth
Absolutely.
of a lot?
Yeah.
Yes.
Does the planning board agree that the reserved areas, a conservation easement, or similar mechanisms should be placed over the southern end of the property to protect on-site development from the impacts of sea level rise and climate change?
Yes.
Yes. Guidelines for the next submission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. So on to our regular meeting. We have just a couple of things to do. I think the first is schedule a public hearing for St. Michael's basement alteration.
Gotcha.
Correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, a public hearing is hereby scheduled to be held at Town Hall, 159 Pantico Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, February 11th, 2026, at 6:30 PM, or as soon thereafter as this matter may be heard, to consider the application of St. Michael's basement alteration site plan at premises identified on Suffolk County Tax Map as parcel SCTM number 300-172-2-9.4. Files can be viewed and comments can be filed in accordance with the specifics in the public hearing notice, which appears as part of the meeting record tonight and will be published in the paper of record no less than 10 days before said hearing date. I make a motion to schedule this public hearing.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, passed and carried. So the next item is an extension of time. In the matter of the application of Maidstone Acres 2 site plan, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-38-4-1 and 2, extension of time, we're resolving here to give the applicant until July 26th, 2026 to obtain a certificate of occupancy. I will note that this is an application that has repeatedly been extended. And I know that there have been conversations with the planning department about what's still needed and missing. Now, I would just encourage the applicant to be in touch with the planning department to make sure that you don't need to keep extending the timeline on this. All right, the next is another extension of time, Verizon at 103 Flaggy Hole Road, Tier 2.
Ed, did you adopt a resolution?
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry?
Did you adopt that resolution?
Oh, right.
Oh, did we not do that?
We did
Yes,
not.
we did. All right. Yes, I make a motion to adopt this extension of time.
I second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Threw me for a loop there. Yeah, I got all wrapped up in my speech. All right, so we're on to Verizon at 103 Flaggy Hole, Tier 2 Administrative Personal Wireless Service Site Plan, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-37-2-1, extension of time. This is to allow the applicant until December 13th, 2026 to get a certificate of occupancy. I make a motion to approve that extension of time.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Again, Verizon at the Amagansett Fire Department, Tier 2 Administrative Personal Wireless Facility, Site Plan, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-150-3-16.5, extension of time to allow the applicant until January 4th, 2027 to obtain a certificate of occupancy. I make a motion to approve this extension of time.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay. And then we have a couple of boards of review. So the first is let's see, which one is first? The Cruz brothers, right? Yeah. So this is at the request of Cruz Brothers for 24 15th Street LLC, looking to obtain a building permit for a residence at that address, and this requires there be some road work that's done. I have reviewed the notification from the town engineer that the amount of the undertaking to accomplish that will be $16,500 obtainable from the applicant, and that's all we need. I have read the notice from the town engineer, and I call for the approval of this board of review.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So I will note too that we received some public comment on the remaining two boards of review, that the actual official owner of the parcel is not listed here. However, I'm going to make note that the planning department's advice to us is to, in fact, use the name of the applicant, who may be an agent for the owner or another party involved in the application. So that's what we're doing. So this is a request by Zhao Lin for premises located at 35 Washington Avenue in Springs. Similar situation, looking to build on that site and is within an area that requires road improvements. The town engineer has evaluated the road improvement needed, and said undertaking is to be in the amount of $20,000. I have read the report from the town engineer and call for the adoption of this board of review.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and finally, a similar situation, Yusef Mina, applying for a building permit on the premises at 4 11th Street in Springs. And in this case, the undertaking for the road improvement required is $24,000. I have read the town engineer's report and call for the adoption of this board of review.
Second.
Second, okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And finally, we need to approve the minutes from our last meeting, which was on the 17th of December.
Seems like so long ago.
A long time ago. It's true. I was not at that meeting, so I don't have any comments or thoughts.
I read through them. They look fine.
They look fine to you? Okay. Motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Are we good, Brittany? Everything's good? We can adjourn? Okay. A motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Pass and carried. Adjourn.